On the evening of August 12, 1967, in the murky waters of the North Atlantic, a small coastal colony known as Greystone Key had been thriving quietly for decades. The settlement, a mix of fishermen, dockworkers, and their families, was connected to the mainland only by a narrow, crumbling pier. But on that night, the tranquil rhythm of the harbor was broken. Reports of strange, almost ritualistic lights moving beneath the water's surface had reached the local police precinct, and the officers dispatched that evening would soon encounter something they could neither explain nor ignore. Sergeant Thomas Delaney, a veteran of the regional police force, arrived at the pier with his team just as the sun had dipped below the horizon. The salt-stiff air hung heavy with the smell of fish and seaweed, and a low fog began to creep over the water. "Keep your eyes sharp," Delaney warned his men. "This isn't a standard disturbance." Local fishermen whispered that the colony's proximity to the old lighthouse and the abandoned shipyards made the waters unpredictable, but no one expected what was about to unfold. By 10:03 p.m., the first evidence appeared, a series of footprints along the water's edge that seemed too large to be human. The impressions led directly into the tide, vanishing where the sea met the shore. Officers crouched to examine them, their flashlights casting long, distorted shadows across the slick planks of the pier. "These aren't human," murmured Officer Keene, his voice barely audible over the creaking of old boards and the distant slap of waves. The colony had legends, stories passed down through generations, of sea guardians, ancient figures said to emerge from the depths to protect the coast. But even Delaney, a man familiar with smuggling and coastal crimes, felt a chill at the thought. By midnight, the situation escalated. A fisherman's lantern bobbed on the waves, and within its glow the officers observed something moving beneath the water. Long, sinuous shapes, dark and enormous, gliding with precision. One of the patrol boats tried to approach, but the shadows vanished before contact. "Whatever they are, they're organized," Delaney noted, recording every detail. The colony's history was layered with maritime legends, but the police had never had to document anything that might blur folklore with fact. At 12:47 a.m., a call came from a dockworker who had been guarding the colony's perimeter. Strange symbols had appeared, etched into the wooden support beams of the wharf, illuminated by the pale moonlight. The marks were unfamiliar, geometric patterns that seemed to pulse faintly in the mist. Delaney photographed each one meticulously. These were not marks of children or pranksters. The precision and alignment suggested intelligence behind them, something ritualistic, perhaps even a warning. As the fog thickened, the officers attempted to coordinate with the mainland authorities. Radio signals were weak, intermittent, as if the mist itself absorbed the communication. Then came the first sighting on the water, a large, dark figure, towering above the waves for mere seconds, then submerging rapidly. Officers reported its form as humanoid yet elongated, almost sculpted, with an iridescent sheen that reflected moonlight in strange patterns. None dared approach it directly. By 2:15 a.m., Sergeant Delaney had decided to focus on the colony itself. The families, many awake from the rising commotion, gathered in small groups near their cottages. Interviews began cautiously, officers noting the fear etched on faces that had lived by these waters for generations. One elder, a woman named Margaret Calloway, spoke in a voice trembling yet firm. "The sea doesn't belong to us alone. It remembers and it watches. The guardians, they come when the waters are threatened." Delaney documented every word, understanding that this case straddled the line between maritime law, folklore, and an unsolved mystery. As the night progressed, more unusual activity was observed. Nets that had been cast the evening before were found shredded, arranged in concentric patterns across the pier, as if intentionally displayed. Delaney's team collected samples, noting that the frayed fibers bore no teeth marks or usual marine predator damage. The officers could only surmise that something with knowledge and strength had manipulated them. By 4:22 a.m., the fog began to clear slightly, and the outlines of the harbor revealed traces of movement. Small depressions in the sand, shallow channels in the mud, all leading back into the water. The officers followed carefully, documenting every anomaly. They discovered remnants of what appeared to be an ancient ritual. Stones arranged in circular formations, seashells positioned deliberately atop them, and remnants of a dark, tar-like substance. The colony had been preserving these sites for centuries, perhaps without realizing the magnitude of what they safeguarded. At 5 o'clock a.m., a final observation from the pier's lighthouse recorded an extraordinary sight. The water itself seemed to shimmer unnaturally, as though illuminated from beneath. Shapes, dozens of them, emerged briefly, moving in coordinated patterns, encircling a section of the harbor. The officers stood frozen, cameras rolling, capturing phenomena that challenged explanation. It was as though the legends Margaret Calloway had spoken of were real, manifesting under the cover of night in the colony's waters. By sunrise, the situation had subsided. The figures vanished, leaving no trace beyond the disturbed nets, the etched symbols, and the remnants of ritualistic patterns. Officers interviewed the entire colony, collecting accounts, sketches, and photographs. The official report would label the event as unexplained maritime activity, but Delaney filed his notes as a detailed case file, one that included the colony's long-standing folklore, physical evidence, and multiple eyewitness accounts from trained law enforcement personnel. The files remained classified, but the colony of Greystone Key continued as if nothing had happened, though the waters and the shadows beneath them were now watched more closely than ever. The sea had revealed part of its secrets to the police that night, blending history, mystery, and the unexplained into a single case file. Even decades later, investigators who reviewed Delaney's documentation noted patterns. The footprints, the symbols, the ritualistic arrangements, and the synchronized movements of the guardians beneath the water. The North Atlantic continued to hide its depths, and the colony's secrets endured, preserved by both human memory and the silent, watchful sea. Some nights when the fog rolls in and the harbor is quiet, the descendants of the colony claim to see shapes moving beneath the water once more. Shapes that obey no known physics, guided by an intelligence older than any records, enforcing guardianship over a stretch of ocean that belongs to neither man nor time. A.M. Singh Case File, Maritime Mystery, the Greystone Key Incident. Some secrets are submerged, some are preserved, and some are meant only to be observed from the shadows. This story documents one of the rare cases where police involvement, human observation, and maritime folklore converged into a case file that continues to challenge logic, law, and history itself.